Some of you may be more interested in things like the particulars, the materials that I'm using, and the particulars of the techniques, and others are just going to enjoy watching the process. What I thought would be fun to do today would be to take an old painting I did at Plein Easton and just kind of revive it in a little bit different, just slightly shifting the composition a little bit. So some of you locals may recognize the location. It's a place called Magnolia Manor, and it's a windmill building, and it looks out over the creek behind there. And I painted on this property a number of times in the first year I did the event. And I loved it because especially in the morning, it was so peaceful and cool, and there's like a massive oak tree there that provides wonderful shade. And so I did several paintings here, and the first one was called Breakfast with Bunny, because every time I was painting there were always bunny rabbits hopping around me. And this one, I ran out of originality for titles, so I just called it Breakfast with Bunny again. And so there's a little rabbit here in the corner. So yeah, so you see the painting, a snapshot of it up on the screen there. I'm happy to paint this, pass this around for people to see. This one is a linen canvas that's mounted on a foam board. Today I'm working on the same linen canvas, Clausen's, that I've mounted to a masonite. But it's the same basic idea. And so I'm just going to kind of use this as my reference for today and just kind of see where it takes us. It's not going to be like the most detailed finished painting in the world, but please fire away with any questions you have while we're working on it. So I'll just go ahead and pass this around, and everyone can have a look at what I'll be working from, and then get it back to me so I can see what I'm doing. This is kind of my plein air painting kit, and this is probably similar to what a lot of the artists are out there using today. This is my pochade box. This is an open box M. Someone told me they don't make them anymore, but this one is well loved. And I have kind of a mixture of brushes in terms of some filberts, some flats, and maybe a few rounds. If you're really interested in the particulars of the brushes, feel free to come up afterwards and take a look. I'm not really hung up on the brands because there's a lot of really good quality equipment out there to work with nowadays. So it's the same with the paint. I have a mixture of oil paints, and they're all different brands. Rembrandt. I love the Permalba white. It's just a good titanium zinc white. And a little bit of Winsor Newton. The palette I'm going to be using today is that Permalba white. It's the cadmium lemon or cadmium yellow light. Cadmium orange I might not really need today, but I keep it on my palette as kind of a shortcut color. You guys can see over there. Ultramarine blue, Viridian, I sometimes use, sometimes don't, and burnt sienna. I have a little cerulean blue here, but I don't really use it that often. And this is cadmium red, medium, or yeah, light, sorry. Cadmium red light. So let me take a drink of water before I get going again. And then this is just a pencil. A lot of times I'll use a charcoal to sketch in the basics of my layout. I'll also often do a thumbnail of some kind, work it out ahead of time, what I'm gonna, how I'm gonna lay out the painting. But today, just to expedite things, I'm just going to sketch it out on here in terms of the layout. I'm a big believer that design, composition is the most important thing to whether the painting succeeds or not. You can blow it on the details, But if you blow it on the design, it's really hard to turn it around into something interesting. This is my backpack, and I've been told it's probably time for me to get a new one, but I'm a little superstitious, so I might just sew it together a little bit more. I don't know if it's superstitious or I'm just used to it. So, all right, let's go ahead and get things started here. And the good old paper towel that every plein air painter keeps with them. Keeps handy. So when I'm figuring out my layout, the first thing I'm thinking about is kind of where the horizon is. As I'm sure you've heard many people advise, and as you know yourself, doing something straight down the middle is just not necessarily going to make the most lively or interesting design or composition. That's not to say you can't make something great with that, but for me, I like to kind of think about whether the focus is on what's going on above the horizon or what's going on down in the foreground. And that kind of helps me decide where I'm going to put my horizon line. This is easy because I've kind of worked out the general feeling I want this to have, which is a lower horizon and more focus on kind of the verticality of it, of the scene. The really important thing for me is to be thinking about what really drew me to paint this scene anyway. Like, what's the idea behind it? What really stirred me about it? And because if I don't have that, then I'm not going to have the juice to get over the finish line with it. I'm going to like run out of interest. I'm going to run out of passion for what I'm looking at. So I'm looking for some sense of delight or mood or feeling in a scene. And that's personal for every artist. It may be that it kind of is reminiscent of a scene that we remember or that resonates in some way, or it could just be kind of the way the shapes work together. That's totally unique to every artist. So for me, I don't normally paint architecture because I'm just not that good at it, because I'm not that passionate about it. It's not my thing. But this one had this feeling of like the land kind of coming right up into the architecture. And that really appealed to me. It sort of worked as a kind of an anchor for this scene. And the other things that I really wanted in there was this sense of atmosphere that you get that's so wonderful here in the summertime, also known as sweltering heat and humidity. So I wanted to get the sense that we're on the water and that there's some depth. And I think it was either about to rain or had just rained or something. And so it kind of created a moodiness that I really liked. So let me just kind of get this. So one of the things I want to do a little differently, since we're doing this larger, is kind of shift this water tower a little bit over to one side. So I'm just thinking about the overall shape of it. And of course, this having a building in it creates some perspective. So, you're thinking about where is that horizon, but the ground is sloping, so it kind of messes with your sense of perspective a little bit. And, it's my painting, so I can change it if I want. I can change where the tree is. Right now, I'm just kind of getting a few things in there. If that's my horizon line, And here are the trees in the background, reflection. It's a calm morning. And I love the way this boxwood kind of breaks that plane. It breaks a little bit above the horizon line. And then my favorite thing in the painting is the rabbit. So what I might do is kind of try to put a little more emphasis on the bunny than I had, because we can give it a little bit more room. So I'm just going to do a minimal amount of that, and then I'm going to start in with an underpainting. Especially when I'm working in the field, I probably would just skip the drawing. If I'm working in the studio, I would sketch it out a little more carefully. My medium is a mixture of Gamsol, a little bit of stand oil, a little bit of Gamvar. Like a lot of things, I change the recipe around a little bit, depending where I'm painting. If it's just me, sometimes I'll use full-on turpentine. It's really weird to see myself up there. But that's okay. It's okay. So I'm going to focus on kind of where the light and dark areas are, and get these kind of just roughly positioned. So I'm not paying a lot of attention to color right now. It's more about the values and kind of where things are. There's my horizon line right there. And that's where Bunny's going to be. So at this point, I'm starting to visualize myself kind of where I want this to go. At a certain point, I'm going to want to refer less to what's in my reference, and I'm going to want to focus more on making this painting its own painting, because it might become something a little different than what I had. Sometimes it's nice to let your memory of things color how you paint them. Plein air painting is so wonderful because you get to absorb really the DNA of a place. You get to have it in your bones because you know what it's like to be there, or you remember what you loved about a particular place or a light or something like that. It's just kind of in the feeling you have about it. So then the challenge is just, how do I get that feeling in the painting? Right now I'm thinking about trying to have this dissolve upwards into the light a little bit, so that's why I'm mixing in a little bit of the white. you know, as this goes up into the air, it's more surrounded by the air. It's going to start to take on more of those colors and more of that sense of light. If anybody has any questions while I'm painting or things that you notice, feel free to interject. So I'm just, I did add a little bit of that orange in there. After all, with the, I've got the Viridian, forgetting the boxwood. Yes, of course.
What would it get you thinking to do this in a horizontal panel, given that it's kind of a vertical
Yes.
height? Why did you not choose to paint it vertically?
Right. So the question is about why I'm choosing to paint it horizontally instead of vertically. It's you know, I'm not going to do the whole, for me, it's not all about the tower. It's not all about the windmill. And it would be a very tall painting to get the whole windmill in there. So for me, it's about how the tower kind of frames the general setting. So I wanted to keep the horizontal feeling. It's to me, it's more about this than about that. And so that's why I decided to paint that way. I also, it's funny because I generally work horizontally. I love horizons. I love the horizontal. And like now everything in the world is vertical, you know, it's like the cell phone is vertical, everything's focused on verticality and going up. And I prefer this because it's more of an expanse. It's more of a feeling of that kind of space. So I'm just personally drawn to that. Yes, it's true. Yeah, your phone calls it portrait and landscape. Your printer calls it portrait and landscape. So, yeah, but it's, I mean, I do paint some things vertical, and I do portrait commissions, and they're almost always vertical. But this is just kind of what I'm usually drawn to. I'm going to switch to using a different brush now I try to keep the colors somewhat separated so that they don't get muddy. So I'm mixing up some color for the sky, and I want to capture some of that warm light coming through at the horizon. So I'll do that up here and then kind of work it down a little bit. I want it a little warmer. I like to work thin to thick, and if I start to get too thick right away, I'll try to thin it out just a little bit. I'll use that orange a little bit for some more warmth. It's good to continue this on the other side, even if, you know, the sky was actually a little bit different. The nice thing about painting skies is if you don't like it, just wait a minute and it'll change, or you can get creative with it. So I'm painting pretty loosely because I'm kind of just trying to lay the colors down and start to get a sense of the atmosphere. I'm trying to, you know, kind of, as I mentioned earlier, create a new space, make this into something a little bit different than it was maybe the first go around. And it's nice to vary that a little bit in terms of bringing in some variety in the clouds. That also helps me start to sense what the values are going to be, how light or dark things are. I just noticed my paint starting to dribble down the brush. And I noticed they have this nice rug here. I don't want to mess it up. Generally, I'm a pretty tidy painter. I wore these pants because they have a little legitimacy on them. They like say I'm an artist. Otherwise, it's just too tidy. But
Lisa, this might be a question to the videographer, but the color shift from the actual painting to the projected image is really striking. Is that?
yeah, there's a little glare on the, because I'm using these brush strokes and these brush strokes, and they're pretty impossible to photograph, you know, to light, I should say. So if I do this, you guys can see a little bit more what the comparison is. But it's actually something that artists have to think about while we're painting, and I think about too when I'm finishing a painting, because, you know, it's one thing to create something that works when you're standing in front of it and moving, or, you know, thinking about it, but it's nice to, I'll if I need to, take a fan blender and knock off some edges, or, you know, do a little bit to make it so that you can really appreciate the colors without having it be too glary. So it still needs a couple more areas roughed in to have a sense of how these things relate to one another. This is one of the challenges with this pochade box, is it's not a huge palette area to work with, so I'll get to a point where I'll start wiping some stuff off. But I'm thinking about the grass now and what I'm mixing up for that. So in terms of my thinking, I know I want it lighter than the bush there. It's facing up. It's you know, a plane that's facing the sky. It's going to have a lot of influence from that, but it still needs to be not as light as the sky to keep the, you know, the sky is still air. Even really dark clouds, it's still air. It still has light coming through it. You know, this is still Earth. I'm going to let some of these edges kind of move into one another. And actually, as the grass kind of trails off down there, I'm going to go a little bit cooler and fainter with this. So I'm just blocking in this area so I can start to get a sense of how all these areas relate to one another. So that's the distant shore behind there, so mix this up. Let it sink back into that soupy atmosphere. I always see lots of violets in the trees in the background when I'm painting in these situations. So I'm going to put a little bit of that in there. Here, let me make a little, no, that doesn't really help, does it? Let me see. I'm just mixing up something a little bit dark. Kind of my go-to plein air dark is burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, French ultramarine. Because you can kind of play with it. You can shift it warmer with just a little bit more of the French ultramarine. On a day like this, it's nice to put that in the closer to the ground areas for a little accent. I'm not going to paint all these things in right now, but I just want to kind of get an approximation of where they'll go. So for the sake of seeing the values on camera a little bit, oops, wrong one. I'll just use this one instead. You can kind of see a little bit if I do that. So you'll notice that I'll do just like a little spot of it and then shift to something else. It's just kind of the way my brain works while I'm painting. You get distracted and you're like, oh wait, before I go any further, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. Painting in Easton in July is all about the greens too. So many shades of green. And with greens, to make them more interesting, I like to use, you know, yellows or burnt siennas or blues mixed in there to just kind of, they're not just green, kind of go with more of the ingredients to green. Especially in the summertime, you know, it's not a perfect golf course sod farm, so it's nice sometimes to, you know, let some of the areas be a little more warm or a little more yellow or things like that. And while I'm painting, I'm thinking about things like, what is the surface? Where is it facing? You know, breaking everything down in my mind into like the geometric shapes that are making up what I'm painting. You kind of go back in your head to like art school stuff, you know, to just kind of fundamentals. Like, okay, if I'm looking at a box, which way is this? You know, what colors are getting reflected onto it? You know, what's going on there? And it kind of helps to keep it lively. In a demo, one of the things you can always tell is if you're having trouble seeing colors in the painting itself, you can just look down at the palette and see what's going on there. I know when I'm watching demos, a lot of times I'm watching the palette more than I am the canvas. So what I'm doing right now is putting a little bit more blue into this part of the sky that's more above us. It's all cloud cover, really.
Nancy, why do you paint the edge of the canvas?
I just started painting to the edge, just kind of, maybe that was a plein air competition habit. It's easier for me to kind of do it now. And then if I'm going back in and adjusting a few things, I won't be so particular about it. But even when I'm painting in the field, I'll try to make sure I mean, some things, you have something like this after using a certain pochade, you can just, you know, rub it later to fill it in. But for me, it's, I'm trying to create something I feel I can step into right now, so I'll start just try to get rid of that white canvas. I don't mind little specks of it showing, but the more I start to develop a space that I feel like I can step into, the more I'll want to get rid of that. It's just it's a double primed Clausen's linen that's mounted on masonite. So I buy the already primed canvas. This one I glued onto masonite or some kind of hardboard with Yes glue, which Larry Moore told me about for mounting, for making your own panels. A lot of times I'll buy Raymar panels or New Traditions panels to work on that are already made. All right, so as I start to get this developed, a couple things strike me already. I want a little bit more of a sense of light coming through. I'm getting a little gray with my colors. I want it a little bit more vibrant. So those are the things I want to focus on improving. So just for the sake of setting the tone, I'll just try to come up with something a little bit lighter in here just to see how much lighter I want to go with it. I really want these colors more vibrant overall. This brush is shedding some bristles. If anybody's having trouble seeing any of the colors or anything, just, come on up and take a closer look. So the thing about this tree that's behind there is, now I'm thinking I might not want it. And I don't really have to put it there, although it's nice to have, if I have something maybe more here. No, I think I'm gonna take it out. I feel like it becomes a distraction. It looks like a tower with mysterious foliage behind it. So I'm just going to take it out. And I don't do that often, but because usually I try to work things out ahead of time. But I was just now looking at it thinking, I don't think I like that in there. So I just put a little bit of medium on paper towel and take it out. Sometimes making mistakes like that can be, and then just wiping out areas can actually be a nice way to do a fresh start on a painting in terms of being able to build up more paint afterwards. Anybody miss the tree? No? So you can kind of see how I'm organizing my palette. I'm a big believer in keeping my palette organized, even if it gets to be a hot mess by the end, at least for now. I have generally, I'm going to keep this with as my sky, and then various areas of the ground and the tower, and then some brighter accents. If they all start to run into each other too much, then the painting becomes a mess. There's a really strong relationship between these two in terms of creating it. So I'm gonna try to keep it tidy. Again, I'm going to try to just get that other color that's distracting out of there so it doesn't get in the way of the rest of the painting. You can use negative spaces for architecture. Sometimes it's easier than painting the positive spaces. And of course, you can just use them to go back and forth too. I find cloudy days are the clouds are always a lot warmer than I initially think they are. So I've got, some reds and oranges in here. Especially this time of day, because there is a relationship to this on the horizon. That light is coming through, diffusing through the clouds. The more I can get it kind of roughed in quickly, then the more I can start to get into sort of the fun, delightful bits of working out the subtleties of what kind of creates a, particular feeling of a place.
Is that possible to work in oil, or would that be the same in watercolors? You've got to opaqueness with oils.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard with watercolor. Everything's reversed, in your order, so it's much harder to. You have to do a lot of that at the beginning, and I mean that's the magic of it, and that's the peril of it. I've taught some workshops where people have said, "Oh, well, I'm not going to work in oil, I'm going to work in watercolor. Can I still take it?" And I say, "Yes, but everything I say, just do it in the reverse order." So you're going to have to just think backwards. So I just grabbed a fresh brush because I want to lay a little more paint on that tower to kind of develop that. And I don't want to use, I want to keep a brush for my dark accents. And I don't want to mess up this one that I'm using for the clouds because I might want to add some more in there or moderate those colors and temperatures a little bit more. So I'm just pulling out a new brush just to mix up something for the tower. Yeah, on that camera angle, you can kind of see the value of how light or dark the tower is. So I'm actually going to take this area in the middle of the palette because the tower it's a little mossy, it's getting light from the sky, it's kind of a neat vessel for capturing the influence of both. But what I've just mixed is too thin. I want to build up a little bit of thickness on there. I want to put more body in the paint. So I'm taking some of the ultramarine and the burnt sienna. It's amazing how much you can do with just the ultramarine, burnt sienna, and cad yellow light. If I can use more of this burnt sienna too, I can play it a little bit more red, which will make it kind of look more interesting with all the green. At this point, I'm not looking at the actual properties, so I'm not thinking about, is this a color match with what I'm working on? And kind of back to what I was talking about earlier with having it dissolve into the sky a little bit. I'm just taking starting to do my anticipated messing up of that, purity of that, and just bring in a little bit more. Maybe I'll do it over here instead. Let it dissolve into the sky a little bit more. My personal trap is always getting too interested in the subtleties too early in a painting. So I know that about myself, so I force myself to focus on the big areas first and not let myself get too involved in all the nitty-gritty until I've gotten these areas in place. How we doing? Everybody good? Anybody having questions or anything? Or okay. I'll just keep painting away here. I'm not picking out details on this yet. I'm just thinking about it as planes with varying degrees of color and value on them. I normally wear glasses for like detail work or reading or things like that, but I find with painting it's better if I just can't see the detail, then I can't get too hung up on them. So I usually like not put them on until later. Because as soon as I do, I'm like down there in the details, and that's not where I want to be. So, all right. So I think I want still more warmth in the lower part of this. So I'm just putting a little bit of, I'm almost making like a yellow ochre here. Sometimes even I can't, because of the heavy brush stroke or glare, I can't see what I'm doing. So then I'll do something like this to kind of see what the value of that actually is. And there's this plant here. I think since I took that tree out, I think I'd like to add a little something over here. I mean, it seems natural that there would be some other vegetation there. I'm just kind of giving the indication of something. I'm not necessarily spelling it all out right now. How we doing on time? Okay, good. The nice thing about this Viridian is you can get really vibrant greens or oranges, or you can do so much with it. And when I'm painting particular surfaces, I like to think of the brush moving like it would if it was moving across that surface. So like with a tower, you'll see me kind of using these kind of brush strokes. And then with the grass, I'll try to let the brushwork express something about what it is that I'm painting. So maybe just a few of those. And really, to make it more interesting, the paint doesn't have to be perfectly mixed. So this is a really strong kind of blue-green, but it's kind of nice to mix it up a little. Yes, sure. Yeah, yeah. So then this little shoreline area down here. It would be picking up a lot of that sky color, so I'm just going to steal some of that and mix it in there. And I think I want to go, since I've told myself I want more vibrancy in the overall painting, I'm going to try to get a little bit more vibrancy in that distant tree line. I think that's where the parkway goes. I just want it to have more color, not get too gray. That's very blue, but for me, but I think I'm going to go with it, and I can always knock the color back a little bit later. I'm adding just a little bit of that here to my boxwood to help kind of tie the colors together a little bit. Also, if I put a little bit of a really blue-green next to very orange-green, it kind of creates a vibrancy and kind of gives it a more alive look. You know, I don't like a green tree painted all with like the same green. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't resonate, doesn't feel interesting to look at. And oranges and yellows are just great for these things. And boxwoods are just so, they have oranges in them. Lots of really interesting things going on. And these are, I don't know, some kind of like lame little boxwoods that are trying to, I don't know, maybe they were topiary that I just didn't really paint well, but they're neat because they have a little different shape to them. So, oops, no, that's not what I want. When I'm out painting, I say oops to myself all the time, like all the time. It's nice to kind of let the areas in a painting flow into one another. So I'm trying to kind of remember to pull things up into, pull the areas to little areas of color. I don't want to do just one speck of something one place, unless it's a particular accent, and not include it elsewhere in the painting. When we're out plein air painting, everything's like in the same outdoor light. That's the beauty of it. It's like it's all bathed in the same light.
But how did you train your eye to see the light hitting at different angles?
Some of it is, the question is about, learning to see the light at different angles. Some of it is what you learn is true. There's like, the expression of paint what you see, not what you know. And then other people say paint what you know, not what you see. And it's a little bit of a struggle between those two aspects of it. So for me, I'm always thinking about, what to look for. I mean, in everything in life, we see what we're looking for. So if I'm like, well, I know that tree, the crown of it is like facing up into the sky, and it might be capturing some of it, but then I'm like, no, but then I'm seeing it turning away from me. And so it's always just a process of thinking it through and observing. And what happens then is I learn to observe more carefully. And the more I look at what I'm seeing and then paint it, I mean, this is where the practice is so important. Paint it. Does it look like what you're feeling about it or what you want it to look like? You just do that over and over, and over time you develop methods that help or that work, and then others that don't. But a lot of it, I remember growing up, my dad was talking about this color and that color in the face, and I was like, I don't see that. What do you mean? There's like blues in the jaw, but once you start looking for it, then you see it. Some people see it right away. It's like just instant, automatic, instinctual. But we can train ourselves to see these things. And you can also mess around with it, try different things. Like, well, I know there's probably a lot of blues in that, but I'm going to try it, a little different. I'm going to try to soften these edges a little bit, make it feel a little bit more like wispy foliage that's in the background. if I feel like some area, you know, looks too light, I can always just put something darker next to it, and it'll change it. All these colors and shapes are in relationship to one another, so trying to think about edges too, you know, where are my hard edges that kind of draw your eye, and where are the softer edges, and how can I play with those edges to create a more interesting painting that flows a little more. In my dream where I go back to my old job and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, and totally slacking on my work, I also, you know, turn around and everybody's gone. But that's okay. But that's what happens. One time I was painting, I thought in isolation on the coast of Normandy. I had like found this little nook, and I was painting, and I was looking at this like meaningful, you know, coastline and historic area and painting it. And I was painting really intensely for a couple of hours, and I turned around and there were like a dozen people standing like right behind me that I had barely heard. So it was a windy day, so it was kind of hard to hear anything. I was a little startled. One guy told me that I did an artist residency and a kind of self-design thing in Alaska, and of course there are bears everywhere. And someone told me that a group of artists had been painting like a few weeks earlier out there, and one of the artists said that he had been painting for a few hours, and when he got up and packed up and turned to walk back up the beach, that there were like bear tracks that came up to like not that far from him. And it looked like the bear had sat down and then like walked away off in the other direction, and he like never saw it. That would be exciting. Pretty much. A lot of artists in the family, and but my brother's an airline pilot, so he's the. But yes. There are a lot of Egeli's painting. And of course, my late aunt lived over here. She was a huge influence on me, Mary Ekrus. And she painted over here, as she said, back when they just called it painting outside or doing sketches. But my dad's mostly known as a portrait painter, but also a marine artist. And my cousin and everybody. the thing about cadmium red. You get a little bit on your brush and it goes a long way. I got too much on my brush, but trying to mix up something a little bit darker for up here, just so that stretch isn't quite so hard and unvaried. When I'm painting clouds too, I like to paint them somewhat in a way in which they move. This medium's starting to set a little more than I would like, so it gets a little difficult to work it, but nope. One of the things about painting in plein air is that for me, there's always a point where it's just the struggle, you know. It's just trying to work with changing light. It's work with, you know, conditions changing, trying to create a painting that meets kind of my original idea, that kind of fulfills that original idea. And as I've gotten older, I've come to feel like it's okay if the painting starts to reflect some of the struggle aspects of creating it. I'm okay with that. I used to feel like, oh no, this is gonna, you know, this painting's gonna look like I have no idea what I'm doing. But now I kind of embrace that that struggle that goes into it. So if that, you know, the water continues to that distant shoreline, and I think I'd like to catch a little bit of movement in the water back there. So I'm just going to do it with just a slight little mark of paint. And then I can also do it by dragging a little bit of that color down here. I'm doing both. So I'm just kind of working them into one another just a little bit, just to create a little movement. Let's see here. I'm going to get a little bit of those architectural details going on. The window reflecting the sky. The perspective is a little tricky in terms of how I'm thinking about it. I mean, in my mind, it's just sort of coming down the middle towards the door. That way I know I'm kind of centered. And then this, with the foreshortening, that would just come a little bit that way. This is part of why I don't really like painting architectures, because I get hung up on trying to make like the lines straight or you know, the perspective perfect, and it's kind of a, it's hard for me to just kind of let it be shapes and values and things like that. Trying to just use some really careful mark making, as they say, so that I don't have to keep going back over it much. Brush control is a really great thing to practice in terms of being able to do something like this. So it's starting to get to time for me to maybe break out some smaller brushes, and I think the time is, I guess, enough time to still do a decent finish on it. Is this a time for, do people want to take a break or anything and come up and look at it, or do you want me to just keep going, or I'll just keep going? Yeah. But feel free to come up and look if you want to kind of see more of what's going on the easel and the painting. But for those watching at home, I'll keep it going, but for those of you who are here, if you want to see, I know sometimes the glare and the like trying to watch it on the screen, it's kind of hard to see. I'm sure we'll take a closer look at it later with the photos or video. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of do a little bit of more detailing on that tower, just to make it feel a little bit more recognizable. And I'm going to do that just taking some of the color I'd mixed up earlier for doing that, but a little bit lighter, a little more of the sky colors because it's facing up. So that's what I'm going to get in here. Oops, too light. I don't want to lose that mossy feeling it has either, so I'm going to pull that in a little bit. think back when I painted this the first time, I was still really focused on with architecture, making sure I had every line perfectly straight and looked exactly right. I'm just using my finger as a guide on the side of the canvas here to catch this little piece of white trim. There you go. All right. Do the same on the other side here. But it's pretty, I can pretty much use this, it's pretty close to the sky color, so. Sometimes it's really hard work to make it look like it wasn't hard work, so you just go back and forth until you get it, make it look spontaneous. More of this. Nope. That's not it. I'm going to use some of these tower colors to get that rabbit in there. Oh, that wasn't me. No, that's somebody else. Or maybe I will use that one. I think I want it. I think that's where I want it. But not that dark. I get teased sometimes for including, trying to put animals or birds in so many of my plein air paintings. But they're always there. When you're painting, they don't even see that they don't notice you after you've been there standing there for a couple hours. This might be when I need to break out my glasses, but let's see if I can put ears on the rabbit without my glasses. Sorry? Not on purpose. Oh, no, 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 no. Nope. No. Nope. No, I don't know there that would be a disaster for most of us. We'd end up really painted. Yeah, so I'm just trying to put in some bunny ears. Things we don't say often in demos. And sometimes when I'm trying to just hint at an animal, it's tricky because you really have to get that shape just right. And so if it's not working for me to paint the positive shape of it, then I'll paint the negative shape. But one of the cool things that morning I do remember is that the rabbit, the light coming through the ears was just really cute. So anyway, with all these things, there's painting and then there's unpainting it. And I often end up going around my painting and kind of unpainting it. By that I mean, dragging a brush across parts of it, softening edges, kind of messing up some areas of it, just to make it more of a painting, with the focus where I want it. Right now it's a funny little detail, but I'm just trying to make the rabbit not look like a cartoon animal, even though it kind of does. But I also noticed that the same color I'm using in there, it's kind of interesting to have it be there, but also over here. And then maybe use it somewhere else in here. Some building like this, there's always a little bit of a worn path. I messed up the rabbit, so I'm going to repaint it. And then for the unpainting also, I want to get more warmth, so I'm going to take more of this burnt sienna and just put it in some places that I'd really like to see more of that warmth. Maybe even back here. Oh, I could even add a little bit of reds. Just for interest. Maybe there's a brick stoop on it. Oops. There's an oops. And if there's enough paint down, at a certain point you can just kind of drag it around a little bit. Oh, but this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to soften that. I think I'm probably running out of time. Does anybody remember how long this is supposed to go?
I think it was 3 o'clock.
Oh, 3, okay. All right, so there's time to do a couple more things.
Another 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
If that works for you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So then just while I had that color that I wanted to put more of in here, I'm dragging it around a few different spots. Need to do that window too. I don't really want to do it, but yeah, well. It's kind of funny to paint the same painting again so many years later, but I'm just thinking about all the things I'm handling differently and that I would probably do differently if I was in the same spot. There's a famous Joni Mitchell quote about why she likes painting so much better than performing. And she said something like, you know, when you're painting, no one says, you know, paint that breakfast with Bunny again, you know. Free bird. That's a funny looking rabbit, but I think I'm going to leave it like that. All right, let me finish working around this a little bit more. And also, I just noticed that I've left a few little spots of canvas showing through, and they're actually spots that can be used to soften edges or maybe adjust them a little bit. So I'm going to clean up this brush that was originally meant for back there. I try to hold my brushes so that they don't all hit each other too much, and also so that they don't hit the furniture too much. All right, so let's just work into this a little bit more. Where I've left some canvas coming through, I don't want to take away from the brushy handling of this, but I just want to use the chance to maybe pay a little bit of attention to that edge. If this was like a quick draw or something, I would probably just let it go, which is fine. But for now, I just want to clean it up a little bit. And just pay a little bit more attention to this line around here, that edge. You know, not having that tree hanging over kind of opens it up, but it also means that this really matters, the character of this edge really matters even more. Nope. I'm just making sure I have the right tone I want to use here.
Did you say tone?
Yeah, just kind of want to turn the edge on it, but I want the right temperature and intensity. So I'm kind of, I don't want the color to totally fade out there, but I'm doing a little bit of, picturing the place in my mind and thinking about what I want that to look like, and just trying a few different things with it. And I think part of my problem is that I don't want to lose the color that's in the kind of the meat and potatoes of the bush, but there it is. Boxwoods, as I said, are just so orange. So I'm kind of just playing around with some subtle shifts. There we go. This is a little bit of the unpainting part. Once I have that, I want to go through and keep it consistent with everywhere else. Kind of doing this, moving a color around the canvas, kind of helps when the viewer move their eye around it. So all right, so I've neglected a couple little areas that need to be wrapped up here. There's usually someone in the back who's saying, "Why didn't you paint that door frame?" Something, but you guys are being very polite. Oops. Another oops. So I'm just taking kind of one more look around the painting to see what I haven't been seeing. It's kind of missing a lot of architectural detail, but I think that's okay because that's not really, that wasn't like the original idea of it. Come back here a little more and look at it. Oops, I can't really see with the glare. Kind of want a little bit more of the mossiness in the tower, so I'm just going to see if I can just do a little bit of that. No, that's... At this point, when I'm nearing the end of the painting, I'll start messing up my palette more and pulling things from different parts of the painting just to mix. Doing that also, once you get a palette going, you can really get a nice harmony going on your painting. Nope, I want a little bit more, a little deeper value. Nope. Nope. I can see now also I got this area too light for what I wanted. No, it's too strong. I always get to a point where I'm just like, I tell myself, if you just walked in and saw this painting, what would you say it needs to be better? And if I work on it too long, I say, I think I want to start over. right. I think we're in the final bit. Do you might have any questions about anything? The sun is over that way, but it's overcast. It's in the distance. So this is all ambient light. Just it's like over in that. No, let's see. No, it's early morning, so it would have been so it's over that way. It's like diffused through here, but most of the light is just kind of ambient light. You had a question?
How do you keep your lights clean, like your trim going to the top of the dark brown?
Yeah.
If it's going brown when you're wanting a sky color.
Yeah.
Are you using a soft brush and not digging up too much?
No, I think I had it pretty well loaded, and I think I went over it a couple times. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can kind of do it either way, you know. You can like pick it up or lay it down. And I think on this one, I just kind of laid it down. Sometimes if I'm not in something like this, you know, I would come back later and just, when it's dry, do a brush stroke on it. Yeah.
Was it somewhat set up?
Sorry?
Was the brown somewhat set up?
No, none of it. It's all still pretty juicy, actually. So, yeah, so this, in terms of laying these lights in fact, that could really go even a little bit stronger on that. But I just made sure I got the brush pretty loaded, and especially kind of front loaded, and flattened a little bit. So then when you drag it down, it lays on top. You know, and of course, then if you come back in and try to do anything with it, that's what's on the brush. So, yeah, but that's probably the best way to do that.
What is your medium?
It's stand oil, Gamsol, and a little bit of Gamfar in it. So it kind of changes. Sometimes linseed oil, sometimes stand oil. Sometimes when I'm out painting, it's just turpentine in there. Sometimes if I'm traveling, I'll use safflower oil, just because it's easy to travel with. It's better than getting into a fight with a TSA agent about it. So.
Did you use Viridian in your background?
The Viridian? Yeah, I did. And I went back in and put a little bit more ultramarine into it.
So just those two, ultramarine and Viridian?
Yeah, I don't think I touched the cerulean at all. And
Light green?
yeah, that's I used the Viridian with the cadmium yellow.
Okay.
So yeah, I put that in first and then came back in over it. Thank you. Yeah, kind of just helped capture that. I just want to, that one little edge is kind of bothering me. So I'm going to use my thumb brush to do that. So, all right. Oh, we still have 10 minutes if anybody has any questions or anything about it. Maybe you all want to come up and take a look at it when we're finished. Nick, are we almost finished, or do you want me to? I'll happily pick away at it a little bit longer. But
Sorry, what was that?
is it? Are we finished
Yeah, I
or?
think, about time to wrap up.
Yeah. I'm good.
All right.
I'm good if everybody else is good. Happy to have everybody come look at it. And but thank you all so much for your time. Thanks for your support on this, and it's been fun. Thanks to everybody at home.
You didn't bring any portraits with you, did you?
No, bring them in.
One in the car. You know.
Right, yeah. Well, here, maybe it's easier if I put this down now that we're not on.